Welcome back to my channel for an episode where something totally unusual when it comes to my channel will happen. I will finally talk about a budget-friendly camera. And that is unusual because typically I speak about high-end photography gear, about Hasselblad, Leica, Fuji, Phase One, Nikon, Sony, Canon. And all the gear you typically see on my channel has quite a price tag. This time it will be budget-friendly, and what I have here in my hands is below 500 US dollar. And it's from a brand which never found its way to my channel. It's from OM System, formerly known as Olympus. I think the OM stands for Olympus Maitani, and Mr. Maitani was the chief designer of Olympus cameras. And this camera caught my attention because it's super robust. You can shoot this really and truly under all weather conditions. You can probably drive with your car over that camera and nothing bad will happen. And it has insane macro photography capabilities, microscope-like. And that caught my attention because below under $500, that's really a value proposition. So I will review the macro capabilities of this camera. In this video, I will give you some data points. I was shooting the camera in the field, taking nice macro shots, which I'm going to show, of course, and discuss. And hopefully your wife, your partner, your husband, what have you, will appreciate that this time when you come back from watching a video on my channel, you will not have to confess there is another hole coming which burns deeply into your wallet. Let's kick this off. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please do so. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, support my work. And if you have not yet subscribed to my channel because you think whatever I'm going to show you will be too expensive, today is your unique opportunity. This here is below $500. I'm going to review the macro photography capabilities of this beautiful black camera. And now you can subscribe. Let's go right into the topic. So what do we have here? That's actually, first of all, a very compact camera, 249 gram. It's super robust. It's drop proof. You can drop this from a significant height to the floor. Nothing will happen. As I said before, you can likely drive with your car over that camera and nothing bad will happen. It's water resistant, waterproof. You can dive with it. There are diving modes on that camera. So wherever you go on holidays, if you expect rough conditions, this might be the companion you will take with you. And there might be some areas in the world where, you know, a Hasselblad camera maybe is not the best companion because it might be too sensitive for what you face. And if we would find out that this camera makes acceptable footage, why not taking it with us? Here we have a camera which has, for its price tag, astonishingly many features built in. And in this video, I will not give a full download of everything that camera can do. I really want to focus on the macro capabilities, which have abilities which are completely insane in my opinion. And that's why this camera started to fascinate me when I read about it. We have here a camera which has about 12 megapixel resolution on its sensor. It's a smaller sensor and cannot compete with the other sensors I typically present on my channel. But that's also not the purpose of this tiny little camera which fits into my hands. We have a widest open aperture of f2.0. We can even shoot in aperture mode. There's a mode dial here. I'm going to show that in a moment. There are some caveats and restrictions in aperture priority, which I will quickly demonstrate, but it is acceptable what you can do with it. As I said, we are talking about less than 500 US dollar here. It has video capabilities up to 4K and a lot of gimmicks, which you can use as features in video shooting, quite nice. And it has a fantastic macro mode. And that's something I'm going to test out in this video. By the way, what I've mounted here is a so-called LED light guide. And if I remove it for a moment, there are other accessories you can attach here around the lens. You see there's a built-in flash, a tiny little flash, and the light of that flash gets channeled and transported through that light guide to this white band of light you have here. Basically looks like an LED ring, but is passive because it receives the light from the built-in flash. And in this way you can enlighten the scene in front of you because the minimum focusing distance of this camera in macro mode is actually 1 centimeter. So you get really close to your subject and sometimes inconveniently close. And that is something which is, of course, one of the reasons why the macro capabilities of this tiny little camera are so amazing. And I think you can use this camera almost like a microscope. Of course, you have to discount the image quality. 12 megapixel sensor, optical zoom and digital zoom, focus stacking built into the camera and into the firmware. So it will not reach the same quality in macro photography what you get with a Fuji GFX and a 120mm macro lens, or with a Leica SL3 and a corresponding macro lens. So be a little bit managed in your expectations, but it is usable footage. And the images I shot, they really convinced me. I was surprised what this camera is capable of. And by the way, even if an image is not perfect today, with all the post-processing tools, including AI tools we have at our disposal, you can actually pimp up your footage later substantially. As I said, I'm not doing a full review of this camera here. There would be a lot to say. And if you're interested in more and get some appetite from the macro capabilities, let me know. I'm happy to do another video. And I want to nevertheless explain a few things at least. So here's an on-off button. Here is the zoom button, wide angle, tele. Here's the control wheel. We have certain mechanical elements here. Here we have a mode dial. So this is currently in aperture priority, but the one we are going to consider and explore is the one with a microscope icon, because that is the breathtaking capability I want to show here on this video. We have a play button. We have here several control elements, an OK button, a menu button, and we have some other elements here on that camera body. So it's, I think, a good mix in terms of user interface of mechanical elements and things you steer in the menu. Now let's switch it on. You press and hold, then this goes on. It's fairly quickly on. Just took a shot here. And you will not see this super sharp very likely, because I have a display protector on this, although this glass doesn't need a display protector. But I have it on because I want to avoid reflections when I shoot with this camera. And first of all, let's go back to aperture priority, because I want to show a couple of limitations. It looks like a camera you can fully control in the usual spectrum of apertures and shutter speeds and everything, but it's actually not. And I have here widest open if I'm in, let's say, the wide angle area. You see here I can zoom out, here I can zoom in. And if I'm in the widest setting in terms of focal length, I can go here to an aperture of f2.0. But if I start to zoom and change my focal length, it's not a constant aperture, it's a variable aperture. Watch how the f2.0 here is changing when I start to zoom. You see, it's going up to f4.9. And the manual control of the aperture has, with every focal length attached, only 3 aperture values. So this is f2.0. I can turn here the control dial, then I go to f2.8. The next aperture is already f8.0. So for instance, there is no f5.6 in between. If I change the focal length a little bit, let's go into tele here. You see it automatically changes. And now if I dial the aperture control dial here, I have other values. I have 2.4, I have here 3.2, and I have 9.0, and so on. If I go back here to the widest open at this focal length, 2.4, and I zoom a little more, sorry. Let's go here to, let's start with an f3.1, and I turn this control dial here again, then I have 4.5, and then the next is already an f13. So all the f-stops in between, they are not there. There are exactly 3 f-stops attached to each focal length. So there are some limitations which we can accept for a price tag of below $500 US. There is nevertheless a lot of manual control possible on this camera here. The menu is nicely structured. It's actually very simple. It has this main sections, and then it has subsections which you can use. And I think it's a pretty tidy menu. I'm not used to it because I'm not an OM system shooter. But there is a lot you can do in here, and a lot of tweaks and settings you can explore. You also have wireless capabilities, and you have GPS capabilities. So this camera can permanently track where you are on planet Earth, and also store it so you can later see the way you actually left behind you, which is also very nice. Now let's go into the macro mode, because that is what I want to explain. Let's go to this microscope here, and here we go. And now I can choose here. There are 4 macro modes on this camera. There is microscope. In this mode, I can go as close as 1 centimeter to my subject. Then there is focus stacking. And here the camera, in the same way as you know it from the professional cameras I showed many times on my channel, takes a sequence of images with different focus points set in a way that if they are stacked together, you get front to back a sharp image. And in particular in macro photography, that's a common scheme because you very often have a very shallow depth of field, in particular if you're in telemacro. And here the stacking is processed in camera. So no need, like in many other videos on my channel, to consult Helicon Focus, which is the professional software for stacking images. Then we have focus bracketing. You have also settings for this in the menu. Maybe I show this quickly. Let's go into the menu and let's go to the shooting sections here. And then, you know, you always get a little explanation what this menu entry is all about. And then you see here focus bracketing. If I tap on it, I can go to the right-hand side and then I can tweak, is there a waiting time? So a delay like a self-timer. I can choose here the number of shots between 10, 20 and 30. And I have also the possibility to set the focus step size, which I can set to wide, to normal and to narrow. And that's something which has also a more finer scale, of course, in professional cameras, which have focus bracketing implemented. Then we have here focus stacking settings, and we go back to the macro menu in a second. Again, we have an initial delay we can choose here if we have the camera on a tripod, for instance, and we can set the number of shots going down from 10, 9, 8, 7, and so on to 3 shots. That's the minimum we have here. And I have this typically on 10 shots. So we also have in the menu here some settings which you can use. Let's go back to the macro menu. Let's see here. So this is focus bracketing, and in focus bracketing, in contrast to focus stacking, here you have to post-process the images. So here you will actually need a software like Helicon Focus to stack the focus shifted frames, which you don't have to do if you are in this section here on focus stacking. Then the camera will process the stacking in camera with the software in the firmware. And then we have the microscope control. You already see here as an example, snowflakes and ice crystals. Before going into sample images from my little shooting with that camera in the garden out in the field, let's play a little bit to get some impressions how this works. So here I'm currently in the microscope mode, and that takes me as close as 1 centimeter to my subject. So let's do this here with this little dragon. Let's go very close to his eye. Let's focus. Here we go. And let's take a first shot. And look at that. Let's go into play mode. So here we go. And then with this lever for the zoom, I can actually zoom in and can crop in a little bit. That looks pretty sharp. I think it looks pretty good. I'm now in the widest focal length, but I can also zoom in and get a little bit of a distance if I want, or get closer, whatever suits my needs. I can just shoot that eye again. Here we go. Let's go into play, and it looks good, crisp and sharp. So that's very nice. Then we have the other macro modes here. Oh, by the way, let me try something because I think this is insane. Let me put the camera aside. Let me show you a little toy car. And when I played with the camera, I tried this out. There is a tiny little Porsche emblem here. While it's supposed to be a Porsche emblem, it's probably not drawn in a very clean and authentic way. Let's try to get this closer here, that you see it. You see it here, a very, very tiny little spot. I hope you can see it in the light reflection. Let's try to find out with that camera how this really looks like and how it is painted. So let's get here a Leica box so I can place the car on it. By the way, that will be an insane video. Here is something inside which I got for myself at the 100-year Leica anniversary a few weeks back. And I will bring it to my channel. It's an insane gadget. I'm sure you will love it. But that's for a later video. So here's the car. Let's get it here. Let's place it here. Let's see. We can go as close as 1 centimeter. Let me try to do this. Let me try to focus. Look at that. That's how it looks like. Can you compare this? On the car, you hardly see it. On the camera, you see it. Now, it's not very well painted because it's a toy car, but that's how it looks like. Let me go into play. Sorry. You see? Not so bad, huh? If you compare this with what we have here on the car, with your naked eyes, hardly possible to discover. With that camera, possible to discover. And that's just the beginning. This camera is insane, as I said. Let's try to do something else. Let's become experimental. So here is a $50 bill, and there's US capital here. Let's try to get a tiny little detail of that US capital here, and let's shoot it in a different way than you expect by just placing it with the LED guide on top of the dollar bill, and in this way getting enough light so that the camera can focus with its minimum focusing distance. So let me try to do this. I try to get a nice and clean shot. It will take a while to focus. Yes, here we are. That's the part of the image I want to have. Look at that. What do you say? This is amazing, isn't it? That's this tiny little part here on top of the capital, and we have just shot it by placing the camera in this way on the $50 bill. Absolutely amazing, isn't it? I think, again, I'm repeating myself, $500, good investment for that gadget here. Besides that, it is robust like the night and you can throw it around in any way you want. Pretty cool. But that's not all. Let's continue. There's more to show. Let's do something different. So I have a watch stand here in front of me. That's from IFL Watches. I like this brand a lot. And there is a little soft pillow here where the watch is resting on. You can mount the watch with a strap on this, and then it's sitting on that little gorilla robot, I guess that's what it is. I have mounted the camera now on a tripod because I want to do now focus stacking here, and tripod is recommended. So let's go into this. Let's get as close as possible, almost touching it, and let's see what we can do. I'm focusing. Busy. And here's the result. Let's have a look. Let's go here into this one and let's zoom in a little bit. Look at the structure. What do you say? Isn't that amazing? As I said, my first example was just the beginning. Absolutely amazing. Let's take this to the next level. Let's do this again, and let's this time zoom with the telezoom here, and let's go again as close as it gets here. I focus and we fire the shots. Busy. Here we go. Let's go to play mode. Look at that. It gets even better. Isn't that amazing? I could actually continue for a while. What I really want to show you are the sample images from my shooting in the field. I think that makes more sense because these are real life examples. I just want to quickly show you here. In this way, as I said before, you would have to post-process the frames by yourself. And here you have the microscope control mode that you can even further zoom in, and this generates a crop. Let me quickly show you. Here we go. Now I have it a little bit bad for you. Well, you still see it, I think, if I look into the filming camera. So here I can now further zoom with these buttons here. Look at that. You see it. Now I'm in the tele setting. I can go actually a bit closer. And I focus. Now I can further crop digitally into the image. Have a look here. Look at that. And I can do it once more. And then I can take the shot. And this is now a digital crop. Is something I typically don't use if I have 12 megapixel. That doesn't make perfectly sense to me. And if I now go, and that's what I wanted to show, into play, it shows me actually in play the part, the crop I did into that image. If I would have zoomed only once, that rectangle would be bigger. Let's do this quickly. Let's get this adjusted. Focus. Zooming out. Cropping just once. Taking the shot. And you see that's now a larger rectangle than what I had before. Going into play mode, you see the difference. This is what I just did with one push on the zoom button, and this was with 2 pushes on the zoom button. I think this is 2 times a crop, and this is 4 times a crop. And since I'm shooting in RAW on this camera, which I should have mentioned already, yes, you can shoot in RAW here and then have more options in post-processing. You will only see that tiny little image detail in that frame if you look into the JPEG image, because the RAW always preserves the full frame. But that's 4 times and that is 2 times. Nice, right? So let's go into sample images. There would be more to say and show, but this video will be way off too long. Let's go into the sample images and then let's conclude the video. I will keep this very short. You saw the slideshow. The images are very convincing. They are post-processed, of course. It doesn't make sense for a sensor that small and with 12 megapixel not to use and exploit the possibilities of post-processing. But it is a lot you can do with that camera. I only want to pick a few of these images. Let's go here. Look at that. This looks reasonably well here. And there's also a good amount of sharp and not so sharp areas in the image. I like that. Look at that here. Pretty cool image. Let's continue. Let's see what we have. Oh, that here is a nice one. Let's go into that. Look at the salt crust you have. That looks really, really good. I think there's a lot of detail in these images. And given that there is a lot of computational photography going on in that tough TG-7, it is amazing what you get out of it. This, I think I overdid a little bit in sharpening, being self-critical. This is not natural. I should have done this differently. Look at it. But there are images which are really convincing. Let's go here to that little spider. And here you see even the eye of that spider. Look at that. Very nice. It's one of these spiders I'm really scared of. They're very tiny, probably half of a fingernail, but they can jump. And that just scares the shit out of me. Sorry, I should not have said shit. But these tiny little spiders, they really create a lot of chaos at home if they appear on the wall. But it looks really good. Let's go to another one here. This is a watch I showed in a different video from Montblanc. Look at this. Nicely done. Very well done. I think, you know, macro shooting with that budget camera, if you don't have a lot of money, but you need close-ups and you need to get very close and you need a high magnification, this is just very nice. And here you even see how it is possible to nicely separate the foreground from the background. And there is a very shallow depth of field here. The background is very dreamy and it just looks good. It almost looks professional. It is nice what you can do with that camera in macro mode. Look at that. Very nice. Let's go here. Look at the details here. Oh, sorry, I lost it. Look at this. Nice. It's not the quality, as I said in an earlier part of the video, you get from a GFX camera from Fuji. Of course not. You know, it costs $499 US, so what do you expect? But it is very nice, and you can also create very dreamy images. And if you scale them up by AI, with gigapixel AI, for instance, you can even print them reasonably large and place them on the wall. Quite nice. Look at that. I like it. That one here is overblown in the highlights that we just saw. Very nice what you can do here. Very good. So I like these images. I will conclude the video here in the next couple of minutes, but I think the sample images in the slideshow here in Lightroom, they're actually quite convincing. This is not just a toy. It's something you can use for serious photography. All right, that's all I wanted to say and show. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. I think for just below 500 bucks, this is an insane value package. It, first of all, creates astonishing images, which, given that we talk about a 12 megapixel sensor, with a little bit of post-processing can be polished and look really good. Second, I think it's a lot of fun to play with that toy. You know, it's actually so small, even if you travel with a professional camera and with your professional gear, you can still slip this into a side pocket and have it with you just to have some fun. And I think the computational photography that OM system built into this super robust camera is just absolutely amazing. And I think it's fully worth the 500 bucks. And drop me a comment what you think about that camera. You will not be able to replace your professional gear by this small device here. But it is a lot of fun. It can do a lot of things other cameras can't do. And sometimes, like with that tiny little car here and that very small Porsche logo here, which you can't see with your naked eyes, you can make very small things visible with that camera you would not be able to make visible otherwise. If you liked that video, don't forget to drop me a thumbs up. Stay tuned on my channel. There's always more to come. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and healthy. And of course, peace out.